welcome to my channel. Today I am going to explain another concept of neurophysiology, that is synapse. So let's get started with the concept. So by definition, synapse means it is a junction between the two neurons, but there is no anatomical continuity, only physiological continuity is present. So if I write 2-3 points regarding the synapse that we need to remember throughout the concept, that is the point number 1. That is first one, it is a junction between two neurons. And the point number 2, that is there is no anatomical continuity, but yes, there is physiological continuity. So these 2 points that we need to remember throughout the concept. Now comes the classification of the synapse. So synapses, they are usually classified into 2. First thing is the anatomical and the second thing is functional. So anatomical classification, if I tell you that it is very interesting and we need to know something about the anatomical classification, that first one, if I write the heading that is anatomical, then there are 3 subtypes. So these subtypes are basically dependent on the axon of the one neuron ending on the 3 different areas of the another neuron. So depending on the areas, the names of these subtypes are given. So let me tell you, first thing is, let me draw the neuron number 1. In this neuron, the axon is ending over the another portion of the neuron, that is axon terminals of the neuron number 2. So this type of anatomical classification is known as an exo-axonic. And the second type, if I draw this, the neuron number 1, and the axon is ending over the dendrites of the another neuron. So these are the dendrites of the another neuron. So this type of type is known as an exodendritic. And the third one, that is neuron number 1, and the axon of this neuron is ending over a soma of the another neuron. So this is the third type, which is known as an exosomatic. So these are the 3 subtypes and the names are given according to the axon of neuron number 1 ending over the portion of the neuron number 2. That if it ends over the axon terminals of the another neuron, it is termed as an exo-axonic, as you can see in the diagram number 1. If the axon terminals of the neuron number 1 ending over the dendrites, it is termed as an exodendritic. And if the axon terminals are ending over the soma of the neuron number 2, it is termed as an exosomatic. So this was the anatomical classification. Another classification, that is functional classification. Functional classification, very important for us, and I think many of us are knowing about it, that in this there are 2 subtypes. So if I write the heading that it is functional classification, so there are 2 types. So the type number 1, that is electrical, and the second type, that is chemical. In the electrical, if I draw the diagram, you will get more idea about the electrical, that if I have an axon like this and those 2 neurons, right, it is a junction between the 2 neurons and which is filled by these that are gap junctions. So these are the gap junctions. The gap junction has a particular significance, that if you can see the diagram, a gap junction actually bridges the 2 neurons, that it is the junction, and whenever ions are coming from neuron number 1 to the neuron number 2, they are easily transferred, right? If we are telling that it is a junction between the 2 neurons and there is no anatomical continuity, but still in the electrical type of functional classification, that there are gap junctions, and it becomes very much easy for the action potential to change the neuron number 1 to 2, and that is the gap junction. And another small concept that I would like to explain at this point, that is synaptic delay. What is synaptic delay? That it is the time taken for an impulse to shift from one neuron to the another neuron. Basically the whole procedure that I will explain, but the synaptic delay, for now remember that it is the time taken for an impulse to change the neuron. And the second one, coming back to the functional classification, second one, that is the chemical that everybody knows, and thus the neuron number 1 and neuron number 2 both are not in contact anatomically, but there is a neurotransmitter between these two, that whenever an action potential arrives in the neuron number 1, so it basically passes through this neurotransmitter. And there are various types of neurotransmitter present. Some of them are excitatory, some of them are inhibitory, but the common terminology which is used for the chemical type, that is neurotransmitter present between these two neurons, known as an synaptic cleft. And from this neurotransmitter, the action potential arrives into the neuron number 2. So this was the classification of the synapse, that is anatomical classification with its 3 subtypes, functional classification with its 2 subtypes. Now comes the major functions of the synapse. So as you can see both of these diagrams, that synapse has basically the 2 functions. First is excitatory function, and the second one, that is inhibitory function. Excitatory means to stimulate the distal one, and to inhibit means to stop or to prevent the action potential entering into the distal portions of the body. So how does this occur? Let me explain you. First is excitatory. So whenever an action potential arrives, this is the action potential. So in each and every neuron there are vesicles. These are known as vesicles present in the axon terminals. So whenever the action potential arrives, those vesicles, they burst up, okay, they blast, and ultimately they open up the calcium channels. Here are the calcium channels. So from this, the calcium ions will be entered into the presynaptic neuron, a neuron which is present proximal to the synapse, which is known as a presynaptic, or I can say the neuron which is present above the synapse, that is known as a presynaptic neuron, and the neuron which is present distal to that, that is termed as a postsynaptic neuron. So the calcium channels, they open up. Calcium channels will help in release of the neurotransmitter, and neurotransmitter is released. Here I will take the acetylcholine. Acetylcholine, it is an excitatory neurotransmitter. So when the excitatory neurotransmitter acetylcholine reaches the postsynaptic membrane, it will bind with the receptors present over the postsynaptic membrane, and ultimately there will be opening of the sodium channels. So there will be influx of the sodium ions, and I told you in my video of action potential that whenever there is entry of sodium ions, positivity increases, which directly indicates that there is depolarization is increasing, and that depolarization causes the action potential to propagate in the more distal portion. So this is how the excitatory neurotransmitter work through the synapse. Now second is inhibitory. Inhibitory, the process is same, that first action potential arrives. Again the calcium ion channels will be open up. But here the neurotransmitter is changed. Here the neurotransmitter is GABA. The full form of GABA, that is gamma aminobutyric acid. So here the GABA, which will again stimulate or bind with the receptors of the postsynaptic membrane. So here is the postsynaptic membrane, and the GABA will bind with the receptors present over that, and here 2 different channels will be open up. that the two different channels, the first is potassium channels and the second channels, that is the chlorine ion channels or the chloride ion channels. So potassium efflux will be there, more and more potassium ions will be coming out of the cell, and the more and more influx of the chlorine ion is noticed, so that there is more negativity inside the cell and the potassium ion coming out, so the positivity is decreasing. So again, I told you in my video of action potential that if the negativity is increasing, positivity is decreasing, that indicates a hyperpolarization. That indicates a hyperpolarization, and this is the inhibitory. So a message will not be passed to the neuron which is present in the distal most portion. So that was all about the functions of the synapse, that is excitatory and the inhibitory functions. So as you can see that the basic functions of the synapse, the classification of the synapse and the basic information regarding the synapse. So I hope my all videos are helpful to you. If you are having any doubts in any of my video or in any other topic, do let me know in the comment section. I assure you that I will try to solve it out and I will give my best effort to solve it out. Till then, keep learning, keep exploring, do like, share and comment, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so that you will receive a notification whenever I post my new video. Till then, thank you so much. Keep sharing these videos. Thank you.